Hello, welcome to this week's Opening Bell. I'm boxing news editor Tris Dixon, joined for the first time in a couple of weeks by Matt Christie. Matt, normally I ask how you're doing and all the rest of it, but let's cut the formalities and let me just give you a big pat on the back. If no one has seen Heroes and Villains on our website, it is some of the most required reading, I think, in boxing journalism today. And that might be giving boxing news in particular a pat on the back, but I think it is so addictive, it's ridiculous. And I've stated before, we don't know what each other's going to write, and sometimes there is some overlap, but very rarely. And it makes for, I don't know, it's just a blissful change of pace in boxing. We really enjoy it.
Yeah, I think that's what everybody says, though. I mean, I have some fun kind of putting the questions together, and I really enjoy, like you, reading everybody's answers. And that is, I think it's the highlight of our week, really. Or one
Apart from the podcast.
But yeah, no, it is good reading, and as a fan, I'd certainly enjoy reading it, and I've had loads and loads of positive feedback. So if anybody's listening who has read it and enjoyed it, thanks a lot for that.
And if you haven't, check it out. Check out Heroes and Villains on the Boxing News website. It is, like I say, it's must-read stuff. It's just there's nothing else out there like it. Some of it's serious, some of it light-hearted. You leave a Heroes and Villains page with a whole plethora of emotions. And it's funny what I like about the different answers. Sometimes one question can provoke someone trying to crack a joke, and the next minute the same question will. Someone else will have you in tears.
Yeah.
It's just, people's interpretations on things are so different. It really interesting stuff. It's a pat on the back for you then, Matt.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, that's where the appraisal stops.
Thought so.
So we had an interesting week in boxing last week for a number of reasons. The magazine's packed. Obviously, recommend you to take a close look at it, whether you're downloading it via boxingnewsonline.net/apps or picking it up from the newsstand. But we saw Gennady Golovkin back in action. Now Golovkin's ticking over against Ousmane Udama, which means his outing against the African ticked all the boxes, didn't it, Matt?
If you look at it in that way, yeah, it's a shame that he these are the only challenges he's got, but it's understandable. I think, as you said a few weeks ago, at least Golovkin is staying busy. Other fighters of that stature may hang around and wait for a big name to come along and agree to fight him, but he's staying busy and he's doing the business against these kind of challenges.
I would rather be fighting, if I was a boxer, I think, and certainly if I'm trying to build a following, I'd rather be a boxer like Golovkin having 2 more meaningful fights a year and 2 tick-over fights a year than a fighter who's struggling for activity fighting twice a year, once at the start, once at the finish.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that.
And in the old days, that's how fighters used to do, non-title fights, ticking over fights, keep them busy, keep the guys, the career's short, so surely you've got to make the most of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we've got Daniel Herbert did a blog for us that's on the website now. Yeah, about that, and just kind of, mentioning how often Roberto Duran and putting guys like that. I mean, that's in fairly recent history, but you go back even further than that, and you've got guys fighting a ridiculous amount of times. So, yeah, kind of harking back to history, Golovkin, what he's doing, but hopefully some of the big fights will happen for him, because I think out of everybody in boxing at that level, he's the one that deserves it the most. But I'm just trying to think. I mean, even like when you look back and look at, like, for example, someone like Mike Tyson, who was at the top and everybody was seemingly terrified of him, but he wasn't short of challenges. He wasn't short of people calling him out.
But people wanted a payday, though.
Yeah,
and Golovkin doesn't bring that.
Yeah, it's a good point.
There's a risk and reward thing. The
risk
is high and the reward's not great at the moment.
Yeah.
Although the money's going to have to go up the further, obviously the more the more sparse the opposition.
Yeah.
But to get those really big names, sorry, I'll let you finish. we're rattling through again. No, but to get those really big names, you got to pay the big money anyway.
You have, and I accept that, and money does make the world go round. But I mean, it would be nice if Sergio Martinez or somebody would be a bit more vocal about wanting to prove he's the best in the division. I accept the Miguel Cotto fight. It's a wonderful looking fight. It's going to be a fantastic occasion at Madison Square Garden. But Martinez, he's not he's not widely thought of as the best middleweight in the world because he hasn't fought Gennady Golovkin.
Okay, interesting point of view. Who is the best middleweight in the world?
You'd still have to say you'd have to say on paper Sergio Martinez, because Golovkin hasn't beaten anyone like that, and so far, and as you allude to in the report, you sense that we've got to see a lot more from Golovkin, but we haven't seen it yet.
Who would win in a fight?
What, with Golovkin and Martinez? I'll at the moment I'd pick Golovkin. He's been active. He's in his peak. The most recent evidence of Sergio Martinez is not of a man who's at his best. However, if he looks fantastic against Miguel Cotto, back to his old self, then maybe that perception will change.
Okay. I was in Monte Carlo, as I mentioned. I'm going to go on about that, like the one that's the new one. And there was a couple of things that caught my eye in particular. One was the grit and determination of Irishman Dean Byrne, who was on the wrong end of a 12-round defeat to Roman Belayev, took some huge shots and kept coming. Full credit for Dean Byrne. Would have liked to have seen him take less shots and be withdrawn after 8 or 9 rounds. The last couple of rounds a bit unnecessary. And then one of the most destructive knockouts I think I've been ringside for, which is the end of possibly the end of Gennady Joy, the South African former strawweight champ.
Nicely said.
Easy for me to say. Moved up to light flyweight, and he got beheaded by Ray the Hitman Loreto, the Filipino. One of the more devastating knockouts you'll see. Probably top 5, certainly top 10 of all-time horrendous knockouts that I've seen right in front of me. And anyone who follows me on Twitter would have been able to see exactly how close my ringside seat was. I was actually on the ring apron. I was marvellously looked after by Rodney Berman's Golden Gloves and the organisers there by having a ringside. We talk about taking off our fans ringside, but geez, that was real sweat on the notebook stuff.
Yeah. It's unusual when you say that, because we spoke about it earlier in the week, but you get to some of the small hall shows and you do find yourself on the ring apron. I mean, you mentioned like you've ended up with blood on your notebook and what have you. I had blood on my glasses at one fight, which kind of birthed a blog at the time. But it's so unusual. It must have been great for it to be that close to a world title fight.
Well, do you know what? The whole intent of the purpose of the trip, and although I booked it when it looked like Martin Murray and Nathan Cleverly were going to be fighting, the purpose of the trip really was to have a good up-close and personal look at Golovkin.
Yeah.
And so, and I'd said that to the organisers. I want to be close to the action, to not calling the shots with any seats or anything, but I said I want to go there so I can see exactly what he's all about. And I was, craning my neck underneath the rope to have a good look. I was actually in there. I could hear the breathing. And obviously I could hear the punches. And I mean, Golovkin, was probably about 65% of where he could be in that fight. He was in cruise control, got the rounds under his belt, job done. But I won't say too much because it's obviously all in the report. But some really interesting stuff elsewhere in boxing last week. Luis Collazo, so often the bridesmaid, became the bride in New York of all places.
Yeah.
Turns out his story might well have a bit of a fairy tale end.
It might well do, and he's one of those guys that you do root for. He's been there or thereabouts as a premier welterweight for a long time now. I mean, he made quite an entrance when he was just expected really just to be fodder almost for Ricky Hatton back then, and you could make a case for him outscoring Ricky Hatton, and since then he's been unlucky in some big fights, and he exactly, and he faded away, didn't he, for a while, and I saw him at Barclays Centre a couple of times just fighting 6-round fights, and he was beating those guys handily, but I didn't think that he still had it at this level, but he was certainly a live underdog, but I didn't think that he'd knock Victor Ortiz out with that shot like that.
No, but I tell you what though, I mean, when you saw the match on paper, for me personally, alarm bells rang.
Yeah.
Like, Collazo is a horrible stepping stone for anybody, isn't he?
Yeah, definitely. And I remember,
so I'll let you get some water.
But I remember writing the preview, and I was kind of thinking, well, it really wouldn't surprise me if it was scrappy fight, 2 southpaws, and Collazo did enough to get the decision. But I can't imagine anybody saw an early knockout coming, but I saw it. I watched it last night for the first time actually, and Collazo looked great in that second round, and Ortiz, I'm sorry, where does he go from here? He's
what
so
does
much
he want?
promise.
What
exactly.
does he want?
Exactly. It's always that kind of, yeah, well, what can I say, guy? You know, if I lost fair and square, it's a tough sport. It's
Do you know
not.
what? I don't think I've been more infuriated at a press conference as I was when he'd drawn with Lamont Peterson. I think it was on the Khan Maidana bill. And Ortiz, I think he had Peterson in trouble, dropped him once, maybe twice. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I remember there were times of that fight where he was dominant and Peterson was really backing up. And it finished a draw, and everyone was like, geez, he just threw it away. He squandered it. And I was just thinking it was there for the taking. And then he got a draw, and I thought, you know, well, hang on, you're the Golden Boy fighter. It's kind of your show. You maybe meant to be fighting the winner of Khan Maidana. And you just escape it away. And he was like smiling and waving at the press conference, you know, happy to be here. And it's like, what do you want? Why are you in the sport? You know, can you imagine Marvin Hagler getting a contentious draw? And, hi guys, I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah.
Just, you know, I mean, some people are in it for the fight, for the glory. Some people are in it for the money. But what's Ortiz in it for? It just, you know, just doesn't seem to be a natural born fighter.
No, he doesn't. And he kind of go back to his behaviour in the Marcus Maidana fight, where he virtually. He just didn't
surrendered, didn't he?
Yeah, and since then there hasn't been, apart from the Andre Berto fight where he seemed to prove something in that bout. But since, I mean, even the farcical ending against Floyd Mayweather really highlighted some flaws in his character, or at least in his warrior character.
Yeah, because he couldn't apologise quickly enough to get knocked out, could he?
Yeah.
So interesting stuff. Then we had John Dennon in Wales, where he saw Lee Selby against Rendell Munro, among other things. Now, what caught your eye on that, Bill?
I mean, the obvious one was the wonderful fight between Gavin Rees and Gary Buckland, which was one of those fights which, I mean, I was at a party at the weekend, so I didn't see it live. I watched it afterwards. I read a lot about it before I saw it, so I didn't score it when I watched it, because sometimes that can cloud your judgment as you're scoring it. But my feeling was that if ever a fight deserved to be called a draw, it was that one.
Seemed to almost make sense, you know. I was obviously following it. I followed the first half on Twitter. Well, I got back to the show at Monte Carlo, finished quite quickly because I was in Monte Carlo last weekend.
Really?
Yeah, it was great over there. I saw this guy Golovkin, it looked really good. Did
you get a decent seat?
So, you know, I was right there. right. So anyway, so I watched the last half when I got back to the hotel room of Rees and Buckland, and it was a great fight. I really enjoyed it. I watched all the next day when I got home. And like everyone else, I think they just favoured the Rees's work rate maybe a little bit more on some of the cleaner shots.
Yeah.
But it was strangely, for a fight where, if you look on our website, all the writers, how many writers were there?
I think it was 25.
So yeah, I mean, have a Bobby Hunter's excellent service that he provides for us. Shows that out of 25 or 26 journalists, not one person saw Buckland winning. For one of those, I don't know. Everyone I've spoken to said, it's one of those that could have gone either way.
Yeah.
But the stats don't lie. I mean, surely if there's 26 writers and they all see the same thing, surely Rees won it?
Yeah, maybe. But I mean, somebody made an interesting point on Twitter about that, and he's saying that, well, maybe we need to make it clear with these guys who send in their scores, whether they're watching on TV or whether they're at ringside, which I think is something that Bobby's going to look into for the next few. So but it is interesting. But yeah, I mean, you can see why people thought that Rees just edged it. But it was a great fight. And I think if you look at the punch stats as well, I think Buckland threw and landed more as well. So you can look at it both ways. Do the stats lie? Yeah,
definitely some interesting stuff. Obviously, it looks like Selby's moving onwards and upwards. Looked massive against Rendell Munro. Looked really too big. Anthony Joshua got through Dorian Darch relatively easily. Eric Hotchin, Dale Evans, good value for money. And I saw the stoppage last night. Actually, I hadn't seen it before. Jason Cook, Tony Pace. I mean, they say the last thing a puncher loses and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
He really got him going, didn't he, with that right hand? It was like a proper bingo shot, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So I think that could go in our year in review roundup. In fact, for one of the more eye-catching stoppages of the year, which obviously the Joy defeat will be there. In fact, I put that on our year in review stuff already straight away. So some interesting stuff elsewhere in the mag. We have this thing where we've got 10 questions boxing fans need answered. Now we've taken a couple of the members of basically we split the amount of questions, 10 questions obviously, and basically each member of the team's answered a couple. Matt, let me ask you two of the ones that I know that you didn't do. Why is TV terrestrial? Why is terrestrial TV not involved in the same way it once was?
Well, I think terrestrial television fell out of love with boxing a while ago, and sadly, I don't think boxing is the draw that it was. But ultimately, in days where television has got to be planned and everything else, I think the biggest thing in not going in boxing's favour is the fact that fights can be called off at the last minute and things like that. You look at David Haye, Tyson Fury as a recent example that was called off with a few days to go. Yeah. And if you could imagine, say BBC or ITV, they'd be promoting that to the max for a Saturday night, expecting 15 million viewers or something, and then what do they do with that whole all of a sudden? What do they do? Stick on Back to the Future 3? It's a difficult one, isn't it? You can understand why.
Maybe Back to the Future 1. This wouldn't be quite such a difficult choice, but I can see where you're coming from. But yeah, I mean, I know. I answered that question in the mag, and it's quite an easy one, to be honest. I mean, but obviously outsiders to boxing might not know. What about this one? Let me see. There's some really interesting ones actually. Why are there so many mismatches?
Why? They've been around since the beginning of time, haven't they? Boxing mismatches. I don't necessarily think they're a necessity, but I think too often it's a case of padded records. Let's build the fighter up, and you see it so often where you can go to a fight card where you've got the fighter from the same corner will win all 10 fights. Yeah,
and you can predict what the scores and all. You can write out the score sheets before. Yeah,
it's
60-54. Exactly. 80-72, 40-36.
You can, and it's a shame, but it is almost it's the core of boxing, and it always will be. And you also have to imagine or take into consideration exactly how many fights take place each week. And I think fans that don't follow it that closely and look at BoxRec every day, there's fights happening virtually 365 days a year, and chances are a lot of those will be mismatches because they can't all be 50-50 fights, I'm afraid.
Before I do a couple of more shameless plugs, and by the way, let me just say that 10 questions boxing fans need answered is recommended reading. I know it sounds like I'm doing a bit of a sales job on you guys, but it's a really interesting thing. I mean, there's some really big topics in there. Be interesting to hear your feedback as well. So if you've got any answers to any of those questions that you want to tweet us, by all means do to either Matt or myself. Matt, plug a couple of things on the website before I self-indulge a little bit with the magazine, please.
I think you've already mentioned Heroes and Villains, which is going really well. I'm really pleased with how that's taken off. I just think I would just really like people just to keep an eye on the website. Really, there's different things going up every day. There's guys in the office who contribute. We're getting stuff from all around the world now as well, with exclusive interviews which you won't find anywhere else. And there's some columnists. I mean, at the moment, I think the website is going from strength to strength. But what I will say at this moment, and if we are, speaking to you guys out there, is just let me know if there's anything you'd like to see on the website within reason. Give me a shout and let me know how it could be improved, and we'll see what we can do with that.
# round card girls.
That's a really good idea. I'm pretty good with a camera.
Exclusive photo shoot. So let me do my bit of self-indulge in my self-praise, can I? In fact, the first one, it's very little to do with me. It's just that I'm the author of both pieces that I wanted to talk about. Is in this week's issue, I've got a feature with Colin Nathan, a South African trainer. And Colin's a very interesting chap. He's been to Freddie Roach's gym to learn the ropes several times, pays his own way. He trains WBA strawweight champion Hecky Butler, who also has the IBO belt. And Colin is a really interesting guy, very passionate about his boxing. Was a very, very good friend. We had a very good mutual friend who's the late Pete Mascardi, who sadly died this week. Our South African contributor from back in the 70s. And I find Colin a really engaging character. We've met a few times over the years. We met at the Wild Card. We went to the Khan Molina fight. He's been over to the UK, and I've seen him a couple of times over here. But how I met Colin is back in about 2007 or 2008, I did a big investigation into South African boxing. There was a death of a young fighter there called Samora Masofi, and then there was a scandal around that time with loaded gloves. And then there was a third incident where Colin had a fighter called Eamon Beloy. And basically, Eamon Beloy was taking a right beating that night from Patrick Malinga. And it was meant to be a 50-50 fight. Malinga dominated. And people wanted Eamon Beloy pulled out any time after the 6th round. Colin kept sending him out, kept trying to G him up with stuff that you cringe when you see it back, knowing what happened. And in the 12th round, Eamon Beloy goes out to the fight. Collins basically said, "Do it for your family," and all the rest of it. And you know that the guy he's buzzing in his head. He can hardly hear what's going on. Dread to think what's going through his mind, if anything at all. And he goes bravely back out on autopilot and just collapses into the referee's arms. And then basically that's where Colin's feature and interview starts. But that's how I got to know Colin Nathan, the trainer. He heard that I was doing this big investigation into South African boxing, which ran, I think, about 5 or 6 parts over the Christmas period. I think it was 2008 on the website. And basically, Colin got wind of it, and he knew that I was taking a very close look at that fight and studying it with the referee over here, Paul Thomas, the Derby referee, who incidentally started writing on the website.
Yeah, yes.
And we basically destroyed Colin and took that performance apart, both of Beloy in the corner and the referee. And Colin got wind of it and through Pete Mascardi, and he sent me a very heartfelt long email, of which I included in the investigation at the time, saying I can't believe what I've done. And basically Colin went into a real tailspin from that fight, a massive depression. Beloy never fought for him again. Colin questioned his worth in his place in the sport, and how he's rebuilt as a trainer, first and foremost, let alone as a person, but as a trainer, is really, really interesting, very engaging. So I recommend you to pick that up and have a look. And Matt, I know you haven't read it, so I recommend you to have a look at it too.
I definitely will do.
And on another note, slightly less serious, although bearing in mind the subject matter, interesting nonetheless, is I had a really interesting chat with Tyson Fury this week. Really, really interesting. I thought after 5 minutes I was thinking this will be wrapped up fairly soon, because we were meant to meet in Monte Carlo, because I was in Monte Carlo last week. Because he's obviously only training in Cannes, which is about an hour away. Anyway, that didn't happen, so we ended up speaking on the phone on Monday or Tuesday. I've done a long interview for next week's magazine with pictures from a photo shoot that we were going to use last year when he was going to fight Hay, when I went and saw him up at his training camp in Manchester.
Did he get a word in edgeways?
I'm starting to running out now. Anyway, for every question I asked on Monday or Tuesday, the response was about 10 minutes long, and it was really interesting stuff. And Tyson was really engaging on Anthony Joshua, Vladimir Klitschko. Help me out here, Matt.
I don't know. I wasn't there, was I?
A number of things that he doesn't normally engage with on that sort of level. Normally you'll get different words out of him and different phrases and rants and raves, but it was a really, really refined Tyson Fury and really engaging. So look out for that in next week's issue.
Can we get a taster? Maybe just briefly his opinion on Joshua?
Up for the fight.
Yeah.
And he hopes that Eddie Hearn doesn't rush him. It's not smack talk. He's just saying, if Anthony Joshua fights a world-class heavyweight after 10 or 11 fights and something bad happens to him, then, we've frittered away a real talent. Yeah. So it's like, don't rush him. But if you want to make the fight, then front up the money and we'll do it.
Right, okay.
So some interesting stuff in there. So, Matt.
Yes.
Look, I've done enough talking for now. I really know that. I really feel it too. In this issue, one of the centerpieces is the whole Mayweather says you decide. Should he be fighting Khan, Maidana? Let me have your say on that, because obviously I've written about it in the column this week.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with anything that's in that column. It's the way he's taking it out to the people that is absolutely infuriating, isn't it? Look, this is what I'm going to do. I'm a people's champion. You decide who I fight, and your choices are Amir Khan or Marcus Maidana. It's not really, should I fight Manny Pacquiao or Gennady Golovkin, is it? And I think that's the issue with this. It's I think whoever Mayweather fights out of those two will be a big event. It's not going to be as big as Saul Alvarez, because Alvarez, although was a pretty an underdog, at least he was unbeaten, and he had some kind of there was a perceived threat there. Both of these guys, you anticipate a fairly easy night for Floyd Mayweather. And the thing that frustrated me for such a long time now is that you look back on interviews with Floyd Mayweather, and for such a long time, even I think before he turned professional, he had this. He wanted to go down in boxing history as one of the very, very best, if not the best. I remember there was an interview as well before the Ricky Hatton fight, or it could even have been before the Oscar De La Hoya fight. And he was like, "You will not know. I will not be appreciated while I'm a boxer. But 5 years after I retire, maybe 10, you'll look back and you will say I'm the best of all time." Well, I'm sorry, if he retires and he hasn't fought somebody like a Gennady Golovkin, perhaps it's too late for Pacquiao, but someone like a Pacquiao, which he's already missed, then he will not be regarded as one of the top 5 best of all time. And ultimately, the only person he can blame for that in years to come, although I don't suppose he'll give a flying hoot because he'll be sitting on millions and millions of pounds, is himself, because he's the one that basically has not made these fights happen.
Do you know what? I think that's the first time I've heard anyone use the phrase of flying hoot.
I did change it midway through the word flying.
I'm glad. I wondered where it was going, to say. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you say about Golovkin, because, I mean, the thing is, right, and don't get me wrong, I respect Golovkin, I do, and the guy's a beast, middleweight champ, undisputed middleweight champ in the making, could even be one of the fighters that defines the era. But if he fights Floyd wins easy. If I'm not saying he does, if he does, and he'll just say he's beaten a guy, because he hasn't beaten, because Golovkin hasn't beaten anyone. There's no measuring stick. Yeah. Golovkin had wiped out Martinez and then wiped out someone else. Yeah. Maybe you'd say, but I still think Floyd's on a hide into nothing, and the thing is, he's put himself on more of a hide into nothing with the options. But look, let's not skirt around. We've done our dream fights this year. We've been there, done that. We talked about who we want to see Floyd fight. We're down to these two, rightly or wrongly. Wrongly to me, wrongly to you by the sounds of it. Who would you rather see him fight? If you could be ringside for that fight, who would you want to see him fight?
Manny Pacquiao.
No.
Well, I'm not allowed to say that.
No, you're allowed
you mean out of these two?
Khan, yes.
Oh, Amir Khan. I'd rather see Amir Khan. I think if
is that because Khan gives him a better fight, or he's a bigger event?
I think it would I think the event would be a similar size, whomever it is out of those two. I think Khan perhaps would give him a better fight. Maidana, okay, he's a come forward fighter, isn't he? And for
who got outboxed by a 50-year-old Eric Morales a few years ago.
He got exactly, and he's. I don't want to say Amir Khan beat him and Amir Khan's rubbish. I'm not saying that, but Amir Khan beat him. Maidana, basically, he comes into this because he's beaten Adrian Broner. That's why he's being considered for this. I don't know. Neither fight really is that exciting. But to me, Amir Khan is certainly not the no-hoper that plenty of people are labelling as.
Okay.
I'd give basically. Okay, sorry, and I'll get to the point. Khan has more of a chance of upsetting him than Maidana from my point of view.
Okay, what percentages do you call this? When we do, is it an 80-20 fight? Split these ones for me. Maidana Mayweather, Khan Mayweather.
Khan Mayweather 85-15, Maidana Mayweather 95-5.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay. Yeah, I've got to be similar to you. I'd probably have Khan maybe 90-10 as things stand, without looking at face value, and obviously you'd have to see what weight it is and all the rest. I mean, don't forget, Mayweather calls all the shots with the weight, and he might well fight Khan at welterweight, but he could easily say, fine, we'll do it at 150.
Yeah.
Because he's got form up to 152 or 154.
Yeah, and in that case, it's a mismatch. It's a mismatch, isn't it? Do
you know what? He did it with Marquez. He said, let's fight at 144. Marquez came in less than 142?
Yeah.
And Mayweather didn't even make the catch weight.
Yeah.
So he could say to Khan, we'll come in under 145 or 146, and Mayweather still might come in at 150.
Yeah.
You don't know, do you? No. No one's got any say on what Floyd does or what he weighs or who he fights.
No, they haven't. The one thing I will say, though, after saying all that, in Mayweather's favour slightly, is people forget where he's come from in terms of what weight class he turned professional in, where he won his first world title, and for the likes of me and fans to be angrily demanding that he moves up to middleweight, it's a huge leap. It's a huge leap. And also, let me also say, let's not also downplay what Floyd has already achieved. He will go down in history as one of the best, but he's denying himself really to be amongst the elite. At the moment, he's top 20 for me.
I don't want to harp on about stuff I've mentioned in the column, but I just want to put stuff to you really. There's a couple of things, like Mayweather's basically cleaned up at welterweight. He's basically cleaned up at light middleweight. You could go on about Aries Lundy Lara and a couple of people here and there, but he's basically beaten. Alvarez was seen to be the top dog then, and he was stretching to get up to light middleweight. Therefore, he was making catch weights, and he still wasn't hitting the right scales right on those catch weight fights. So then going up to middleweight, he would be like, "What? Why would if I can't get up to that?" And he's not a massive guy. Why would he go up to middleweight? Because he's, just because he's cleaned out his two divisions. That's, why should he? But then you look on the other hand, you think of Ray Leonard fighting Hagler at middleweight. You think of him going up to light heavyweight to fight Donnie Lalonde just because there was a title there. You think of Oscar doing that, going up to middleweight to fight Hopkins. You think of people throughout the years, Holyfield from cruiser to heavy for whatever reasons, financial or otherwise. Ray Robinson going up to fight Joey Maxim, all the different guys he fought at light heavyweight.
Yeah.
They proved their greatness, but they wanted to seemingly take it to another level that Floyd's reluctant to take it to. And that's the frustrating thing, is where Floyd seems to be beating people with room to spare, we want to see the full potential. We want to see and enjoy these skills while they're still here. And so to get the most out of these skills, we need someone who's going to, or to get the most out of Floyd, we need someone who's going to bring the best out in him, which means taking on challenges where we get to see his full array of skills.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, because at the moment Floyd Mayweather is a bona fide welterweight. But kind of what I was going back to is that, what was his first world title at super featherweight? Whereas, you mentioned Leonard there, his first one was at welter, so perhaps it was not quite such a stretch on Leonard's body as it will be on Mayweather's. However, Floyd has now been at welterweight for a long time now. He's had his peak years, one could argue, at welterweight, or his body has had the peak years at welterweight, and he should definitely make that move if he wants to be remembered how he wants to be.
So Khan Maidana, Khan's edging the poll at the moment.
Yeah.
If you were voting for one person, you'd vote for Khan.
I'd vote for Khan, yeah, but ultimately I think he's going to fight whoever he wants to fight, isn't he? Mayweather, it doesn't matter what that poll will say. It can be. Yeah,
preordained. You think it is? Yeah, it seems like. It seems there's a couple. I think Mayweather might be making him sweat. Obviously, there was a report that Khan went out and said he's next in line. He signed the contract, and I think this whole thing's a thing employed to maybe make him sweat and. Say you wait, before you tell anyone you're jumping, let me tell you how high you got to jump. I think that it could be a bit of brinkmanship, gamesmanship. And I think Floyd ultimately knows that Khan's fan base is bigger than Maidana's, which I'm sure it is.
Yeah, and let's face it. Even though I'd rather see Khan face Mayweather than Maidana, that's the only reason why Khan is being mentioned as an opponent. It's the only reason he'll get the fight is his fan base. At this point in his career, he's coming off, a rickety performance against Julio Diaz. He's had some nasty stoppage defeats. I think the biggest bugbear for everybody is, okay, we can go to the argument styles make fights, and potentially this could make an interesting one for Floyd Mayweather, but he hasn't done the groundwork recently to get what is the biggest date in boxing, Amir Khan.
Okay, all right. Well, look, that will be us finishing now for the week, Matt. You've had the last say. I've just realised that I left my lunch in the microwave. Jeez. I've also got to go out and speak to Derek Chisora ahead of his preview. I've done an interview with Kevin Johnson that's gone up on the website today. As I've said, though, check out Heroes and Villains online, and please pick up the magazine this week for the column, My Open Letter to Floyd Mayweather, and this the feature with Colin Nathan, which I think you should find an interesting read. In the meantime, thanks a lot for joining us. Greatly appreciate it, and Matt and myself will be back next week.
There's no red light.
Yeah, there is.
Is there? I can't see it. I can see about.
People on
I
there.
can see about 400 bright white ones. Thank you for watching and listening, and remember to subscribe to us on YouTube. Hit the like button on Facebook. Comment or write a review on iTunes or Google Play. It only takes a minute, and it does loads to help us produce shows like these.